Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. We are students of Faculty Administrative Science and Policy Studies going to present our topic Cold War for International Relations. The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies. The Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc, which began following World War II. Historians do not fully agree on its starting and ending points, but the period of generally considered to span the 1947 Truman Doctrine on 12 March 1947 to the 1991 dissolution of the Soviet Union on 26 December 1991. The terms Cold War is used because there was no large-scale fighting directly between the two superpowers, but they each supported major regional conflicts known as proxy wars. The conflict was based around the ideological and geopolitical struggle for global influence by these two superpowers, following their temporary alliance and victory against Nazi Germany in 1945. The basic of constructivism. Constructivism sees the world and what we can know about the world as socially constructed. This view refers to the nature of reality and the nature of knowledge that are also called ontology and epistemology in research language. Alexander Wen 1995 offers an excellent example that illustrates the social construction of reality when he explains that 500 British nuclear weapons are less threatening to the United States than 5 North Korean nuclear weapons. These identifications are not caused by the nuclear weapons, which is the material structure, but rather by the meaning given to the material structure, which is the ideational structure. It is important to understand that the social relationship between the United States and Britain and the United States and North Korea is perceived in a similar way by these states, as this shared understanding or intersubjectivity forms the basis of their interactions. The example also show that the nuclear weapons by themselves do not have any meaning unless we understand the social context. It further demonstrates that constructivists go beyond the material reality by including the effect of ideas and belief on the world politics. This also entails that reality is always under construction, which opens the prospect for change. In other words, meanings are not fixed but can change over time depending on the ideas and beliefs that actors hold.
There are two main parties that involved in Cold War, which is United States and Soviet Union. During World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union fought together as allies against the Axis power. However, the relationship between the two nations was a tense one. Americans had long been worried of Soviet communism and concerned about Russian leader Joseph Stalin's tyrannical rule of his own country. For their part, the Soviets resented the Americans' decades-long refusal to treat the USSR as a legitimate part of the international community, as well as the delayed entry into World War II, which resulted in the death of tens of millions of Russians. After the war ended, this grievance ripened into an overwhelming sense of mutual distrust and enmity. Post-war Soviet expansionism in Eastern Europe fueled many Americans' fears of Russian plan to control the world. Meanwhile, the USSR came to resent what they perceived as American officials' bellicose rhetoric, arms built up an interventionist approach to international relations. In such a hostile atmosphere, no single party was entirely blamed for the Cold War. In fact, some historians believe it was inevitable. The first factor that led to Cold War is the tension between superpower among United States and Soviet Union. The heightened tension between the United States and Soviet Union at the close of World War II were the first significant cause of the Cold War. During World War II, the Soviet Union, led by Joseph Stalin, united with the United Kingdom, France, and United States against Nazi Germany. The alliance was formed with the goal of defeating the fascist government in Europe and Japanese expansionism in the Pacific at the time. By 1945, however, the major battles in both the European and Pacific threats had come to a close. The Yalta Conference, together with the Potsdam Conference, played a key role in the conclusion of World War II and the start of the Cold War. The Yalta Conference was a wartime gathering of elite leaders, including Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin. The summit was held near Yalta, which is today the city in Ukraine's crimes. The intention of the conference was for the three allied countries to start discussing about how to reconstruct Europe once Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany were vanquished. The Yalta Conference, on the other hand, is now considered a crucial event in the Cold War because it exposed the rift between Stalin and the other two leaders. Neither side trusted the other, and Joseph Stalin resented the other two, claiming they had postponed the Normandy invasion and Allied invasion of Italy in order to force the Soviet army to fight Nazi Germany alone. At the subsequent Potsdam Conference, the division would be emphasized even further. The hope was that the three leaders could agree on how to handle world issues after the war was over, including peace treaty issues and the effects of the war. As well as at the Potsdam Conference that Truman made Stalin aware of the American atomic weapons program and that the Americans had developed the world's first atomic bomb. It was also at this conference that a deep divide was created between the United States and the Soviet Union specifically. Truman was incredibly suspicious of Stalin and his intentions, and Stalin felt a similar way toward Truman. In general terms, the seed of Cold War were planted at the Potsdam Conference. As such, many historians view the Yalta and Potsdam Conference as the start of the Cold War since they highlighted the growing mistrust and tensions between Truman of the United States and Stalin of the Soviet Union. Second factor is nuclear arms race. At the outset of the Cold War, the United States was the only nation in the world to contain atomic weapons such as those used against Japan in 1945. As such, the Soviet Union was not able to militaristically challenge the United States and work to develop their own atomic weapons. However, on August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union performed a test to their first atomic bomb codenamed First Lightning. These early years were important to the growing tension and anger between the two superpowers. Because of the development of nuclear weapons, the two nations did not trust each other. As a result, they each spent the first decade of the Cold War developing large arsenal of nuclear weapons. By the 1955, each country had developed enough nuclear weapons to destroy each other. As such, the initial development of nuclear weapons in the 1940s and the 1950s is considered to be a cause of Cold War because it has increased the tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union and caused them to enter into a dangerous nuclear arms race.
As a conclusion, constructivism is often said to simply state the obvious, that actions, interactions, and perceptions shape reality. Indeed, that idea is the source of the name of the theory family. Our thoughts and actions literally construct international relations. Yet, this seemingly simple idea, when applied theoretically, has significant implications for how we can understand the world. The discipline of international relations benefits from constructivism as it addresses issues and concepts that are neglected by mainstream theories, especially realism. Doing so, constructivists offer alternative explanations and insight for events occurring in the social world. They show, for instance, there is only the distribution of material powers, wealth, and geographical conditions that can explain state behavior, but also ideas, identities, and norms. Furthermore, their focus on additional factors shows that reality is not fixed but rather subject to change.